Alright, so now I'm going to cover web directories. First I'm going to explain what directories are, then I'm going to explain why they were useful, and then why they are no longer useful, the few exceptions, and why some people still say they are useful. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up a browser here, and this is probably the second or third most famous directory in the United States ever had. It's called dmoz.org. And basically, a web directory is a website that classifies a bunch of links to other websites. So, for example, we've got some classifications here like arts and business and computers. And we can go ahead and click arts. And then we've got some other subjects within the topic of arts like animation, antiques, architecture, music and movies. We can go ahead and click on movies. Then there are a bunch of different kinds of movies or subjects related to movies like actors and actresses, awards, characters. So I'm going to click on awards. And then we've got a bunch of links to websites that have to do with movie awards and an explanation of a bunch of them. The first one is for the 2006 MTV Movie Awards. And the fact that the #1 link goes to the 2006 MTV Movie Awards is by itself a pretty good sign that these things are pretty worthless and nobody uses them anymore. But getting back to why directories were useful at one time, before search engines were popular and really good, this was the best way that people had to figure out what's on the internet. People used to come to these directories and they would actually start at the homepage, and they would say, "Oh, I've got a question about movie awards," and so they'd find movies and click on it, and then click on awards, and then actually look for links. That was going on, and I'd say the early to mid '90s is when it was most popular, and it was still popular even in the late '90s. Even when search engines started to take off. So in the beginning of the web, it was a great way to get traffic. And then even as the web progressed, it was still a good way to get some SEO benefit in the late 80s, or I'm sorry, late 90s, early 2000s, because there were still people using them, and they were well kept up, and they weren't full of crappy links because people were actually maintaining them. But over time, people shifted from using directories to using search engines because they're so much better. For example, I can just do a search for movie awards into Google. I don't have to go through a whole list of different subjects, and I've got these great links here, and the #1 link is the 2011 MTV Movie Awards. Obviously, I'm making this video in the year 2011. That's a whole lot more relevant to me than the 2006 MTV Movie Awards. So over time, people were using directories less, and as that happened, the quality went down because people started spamming them, and people that owned web directories said, well, there really is no long-term feature here, so I'm just going to try to squeeze every penny out of this. And they started selling links to crappy websites. So, let's say some Viagra website offers a directory $500 to put up a bunch of links to the Viagra website. Some of those directories would do that because, hey, they're losing money, they need to get money in the door, and they know they're on a sinking ship, so why not make that extra $500? So at this point in time, they're pretty worthless. There are a few exceptions. For example, I'm going to go back to DMOZ here. If you can get a link in DMOZ, it's still valuable. There's still something like 300 or 400,000 people that are coming to this site every month. As it's December of 2011, and I'm giving you the most recent data there. By the time you're watching this video, it might be less. But one of the things is that nobody really keeps these up very well. So you might submit your link to a really good directory like DMOZ, and it might take you 6 months or a year or 2 years for somebody to actually get around to deciding whether or not to include your link in DMOZ, and maybe nobody gets around to it. Maybe you submit it to the biology page, and the guy who edits the biology page quit 5 years ago, and they never hired a new person because there's just no money to be made in directories. So it's pretty much just a waste of time. And even the exceptions to the rule, they're becoming few and far between as time goes by, and less and less people go to directories. Even this one, DMOZ, it's still fairly popular, but every year less and less people go to these directories because because search engines are so much more useful. So it's just not a good long-term plan to put much effort or time or money into getting links from directories for SEO purposes. So the last point is, why can you still find a bunch of articles that say, hey, if you're trying to do SEO, submit your site to a bunch of directories? Well, the reason is because a lot of people don't like to learn new skills constantly. A lot of people are content to just repeat the same things that they learned when they were first starting to learn about the web, or just repeat what other people say without actually testing it. I'll give you some data here. The last time I actually really worked hard on directories was during the summer of 2011. I was building a website, and I spent about, I'd say, $750 by submitting links to my website in about 50 of the most popular directories on the web, and I got virtually no return on that investment whatsoever. My search engine rankings went up just a hair, barely noticeable. I only noticed because I do this stuff all the time, and I was paying close attention to it, but it made no real impact on the revenue of the website or how many visits it was getting. And the value is just going to go down over time, even from that low point. So to wrap up, don't waste your time with web directories unless you are going to be a professional full-time SEO. There's a few diamonds in the rough out there that still have a little bit of, I shouldn't even say diamonds, I should say like lumps of copper in the rough, because that's about how valuable it is. But there are a few hints of value out there if you want to be a full-time SEO. But unless you're trying to do that, don't waste your time with these directories. They're a complete waste of time and money.